Well, hi everybody. In our last video, we talked about how to use the iPhone and Android Lightroom CC camera for the app that goes on your phone. Today, I want to talk about how to post-process the photos you take with that app. Remember, it shoots RAW, so you get a wide range of ability to bring back shadows, to cut down on highlights, and get a much better tonal range out of your photography. So I'm going to cover this in three parts. First part's going to be how the software lays out and what the different functions are. The second part will be doing global adjustments, and the third part will be targeted adjustments or local adjustments, and then sharing. So I hope you enjoy this. Let's get going. Okay, so here we are in Lightroom CC for the mobile device. In this case, it's an iPhone. It's an iPhone 10, but you can use it on Android, or you can use it all the way from an iPhone 6S, which shoots RAW, up to current models of the Apple iPhone. The first thing you want to learn is your settings. You want to set this all up. I don't know who this guy George is, but somehow his name keeps coming up here. What this means is that I've actually subscribed to the Creative Cloud, and I'm logged in. That means I'm able to use all the premium features of Lightroom Mobile CC, and I'm going to call it Lightroom Mobile for now, just to make it easier to understand. So the first one we go to is basically the information, and you have all these credits to the people that worked on it, and that's interesting. You could look at some of those, and some of those people we actually know who they are from other YouTube videos. Then there's something called What's New, and this is quite interesting. It shows you all the new versions that have come out, going all the way back to last year, and then it tells you what's new in this particular version that you have. The premium features, now this takes you on a little bit of a tour. With subscription to Creative Cloud, you get a lot more out of this application. Now this application is free, as I mentioned before, and you can download it and use the camera, get RAW photos, transfer them over to your iPhotos app or your desktop or wherever you want. You just can't sync with the Lightroom applications on your computer or on the web. So there's no Creative Cloud to hold your photographs. Otherwise, you're free to use it. Anyway, moving along, you've got in the premium feature, your photos are always backed up. You get 100 gigabytes free, and that's quite a bit, actually. You can pay to get more, but I tend not to store photographs in the Lightroom cloud. I store them on another cloud called Backblaze because I have about 10 terabytes worth of photographs, and that's a lot. If you shoot an awful lot and you're a professional photographer, or you shoot a lot of RAW photographs, you're going to want to look at other options besides the Creative Cloud cloud storage. Sensei is the artificial intelligence that Adobe refers to when it talks about automatic exposure and some of the things, and it's going to become more and more prevalent in applications that Adobe creates going forward. In this particular situation, you can search for things, edit in artificial intelligence, search for artificial intelligence. For example, if you want to put in mountains as a search engine, it'll find all the pictures that have a mountain in them. Now, it works pretty well. It doesn't necessarily work perfectly. It's going to show you, for example, a picture of the dog in the back of the car, and that's not a mountain. So you have to be kind of careful how you use this. The healing brush, which is a big plus in Lightroom Classic and in Lightroom CC, is now on the phone, so you can actually take people out of a picture or take objects out. Let's say there's a can of soft drink in the foreground, and you've got a really beautiful picture of, in this case, the Louvre. You want to take that out. You can actually take out a whole person, and that works pretty well. I mean, it works very, very well actually in Lightroom Classic, so I assume that it's the same thing here. Perspective correction, and this is really good. This was introduced to Lightroom Classic a while back. It's called Guided Upright. You can also do it manually and correct perspective created by the barrel of the lens. And you can edit RAW photos from all your cameras. For example, if you shoot RAW on a DSLR camera, you can actually plug that right into your device, bring them into Lightroom, and edit. So that's one of the other premium features. And then you can share photos on the web through the Lightroom for web, Lightroom CC for web, with very fascinating series of applications that they have come up with in this Lightroom family of Lightroom Classic, which is the desktop that we all know and love from years gone, 10, 11 years ago. Lightroom CC, which is the desktop version of this mobile device, and then Lightroom for the web, which not too many people know about, but it's a real powerful feature. If you're not around a computer, your computer or your device, you can go to anywhere, a business office in a hotel, and work on Lightroom on the web. And I think this is great. You can also share photos on the web. So that's the new features. And if I click up here in the Lightroom, I can go down here and see how much I've got stored. I've got 10,568 photos, not all of which are raw, of course. Those are photos from my iPhone going back to since time began, and I've got 34 gigabytes of 100 gigabytes. So I got a long way to go, and I don't have use cellular data turned on because I'm not really concerned about syncing with my devices if I'm out in the field, and I don't want to burn up the cellular data charges, so I wait till I'm in a Wi-Fi situation. I only download Smart Previews simply because it saves space and time. It really works a lot faster. You can review your photos a lot faster. And remember, those raw photos are there if you want to download them to your device, but I usually use this Smart Previews in both the desktop version and in my Lightroom mobile version. Also, I prevent from sleep while I'm charging the device. What this does, it takes a little bit of time for the photos to sync back to your devices. And if you go to sleep and the computer goes to sleep or your phone goes to sleep, then it's not going to sync. So I leave this on, my phone's plugged in, and it won't sleep until all the photos are fully downloaded, and then I go ahead and turn it off anyway. So that's a good feature, and it takes a little bit of time. Like I said, these raw photos are pretty big, so they go up to the cloud and down to your computer, and that takes some time. The next feature is just a general feature, and I have it set to auto add photos, add videos. Of course, I can add videos even though Lightroom does not really process videos, but I have the videos in there in case I want to bring them into Photoshop or someplace else like Premiere Pro once I get back to my computer. My copyright information is Doc Miles Photo Tours, and I have that on every photograph in the metadata. And then my lens profile correction doesn't matter if it's if you shoot it with just a regular JPEG and it's on your iPhone camera, it's going to come in already profile corrected. The raw files will be processed automatically to correct for the profile of your phone, which is the APC rear camera if you're doing straight shot out of your iPhone, and the APC front camera is the one you do selfies with. Now I have show touches turned on, and that just helps me help you see what I'm doing throughout these tutorials. You can turn that off if you don't really need to see what your finger's doing. Sharing options. I also include I don't include a watermark. I think a watermark, honestly, doesn't protect your photos from anything. Now with Photoshop's auto content fill, you can take a signature right off a photograph and use it for whatever you want. So unless you really feel strongly about putting your watermark on photos, you're really not preventing anything. It's just a matter of getting your name on a photograph. So I don't even bother with it. The customized part of it is you can actually change whatever you want to put up there. It's, you could put Doc Miles Photos, you could put Loop Brothers Photo Workshops, or whatever you want, your own, copyright. In the metadata, I also include the metadata when I share. I include the caption, of course, the camera raw information, and the location. I'm pretty easy about sharing. If I'm sharing a photograph to Instagram or to some other device, first of all, Facebook strips out all the metadata anyway. I'd like to see where these people shot it. I'd like to see what information they had. It's not going to change my opinion about their photograph, but it might give me a little more insight as to what they did with it. This is particularly helpful when you're shooting with a DSLR and you have all these different settings. On shooting from this camera, it's okay. So that's your basic, now, gesture shortcuts. This is one's really important. To toggle information, and I'll show you how this works. It's a 2-finger tap. To toggle the loop view, it's a 2-finger tap. That loop is like a jeweler's loop where you look up real close. You remember in the old days they'd put a thing in their eye and they'd look at a diamond and say, oh, this isn't real. Well, that's what a loop is. It's L-O-U-P-E, and it's called loop. Edits before and after. If you want to see the before and the after, just put your finger on the photograph and hold it, and that will tell you what the photograph looked like before you did any edits to it, and then you let go, and there's the edits. So if you want to crop and reset your crop, just double tap the crop frame, and it'll reset your crop for you. Help and support. You can check out the frequently asked questions, which takes you to the web, and there's a whole bunch of frequently asked questions for Lightroom Mobile. You can access the support forum. You can get support. You can request a feature, and this is interesting. You can go to feedback on the web and say, hey, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see something in Lightroom for mobile devices that is, I've noticed on Lightroom Classic, and I hope in the next version you put it in. So that's how that works. And then you can reset the help overlays. And what that does is it just resets everything. Okay? So now we have technology previews, and this one's a lot of fun because what Adobe does is they put in features that are eventually going to be in the actual application itself, in the actual Lightroom Mobile CC. But they give you a preview. And one of the cool ones here is long exposure. And I'll show you how that works a little later on. Essentially what it does, it takes a series of images, I think 3 or 4 images, I'm not sure how many, of say a moving stream or moving clouds. And then it puts them together in one photograph that has this motion feeling to it, that like soft water, flowing water, flowing clouds. It works okay, and I'll show you the good things and the bad things about it as we get into things. So that's basically how the settings work. And now, so let's dive into the actual editing itself. Okay, so now we're in the fun part. This is where it gets really a lot of fun, editing your photos right on your phone. And I do this a lot when I'm out in the field. As I mentioned before in my previous video, that I don't really shoot with a DSLR when I'm with clients, and so I'm using my iPhone shooting raw photographs. And the challenge for me is to see how good I can get with this particular iPhone Lightroom camera, but also how fast I can edit in the field and get it up to social media or save it and compare it with the shots that the individual got. And we have a lot of fun with this whole idea. I've also often heard people say, I've spent all this money on my DSLR equipment and lenses, and I come out and my wife stands next to me and she gets a shot better than I do. Well, maybe. But that seems to be the case in a lot of situations. The camera's pretty darn good on the iPhone and the Android, so you will get some decent shots. Now, what you do with those afterwards, if they're raw shots, you can pretty much do the same thing with them, but you're not going to get that same giant megapixel / whatever you can with a DSLR, but it's pretty darn close. And remember, just a few years back, 12 megapixels was huge. I mean, most cameras, when they were in their infancy, digital cameras were like 5 and 7 megapixels. Even the first iPhone, I think the camera was 3 megapixels. So don't get caught up in the megapixel thing. Just let's have fun with this camera, and I think you'll get some great shots. I've even framed some things I've gotten out of my Lightroom camera. So anyway, let's take a look at the landscape here. First of all, you have this cloud up here, and if you click that, it'll show that I am synced and backed up at this moment. I am syncing now with all my devices if, in fact, I take a picture and I'm syncing. So at the end of the day, I keep this on all the time, and it will show you little bubbles across the top of that cloud when it's actually syncing. So you'll know that you're actually hooked up with your computer at home. The search engine, as I said, uses this intelligent online search. It's called, if you search for dog or boat, and as well, it searches everything like the title, the metadata, keywords, or cameras. We're currently not searching for things like faces, but search is always improving. That's Adobe's message. So that's how the search engine works, and it works pretty darn good, actually. Now, I'm in the edit process here, so I've got all photos. You'll notice that there's photos. There's also what's called albums, and they used to be called collections. They still are called collections on Lightroom Classic CC for the desktop. The reason Adobe changed, and in my opinion, the reason Adobe changed, and I don't have this definitively, is that, first of all, Apple Photos uses albums. Collections got confused with catalogs, because maybe they both start with C and A. Who knows? But catalogs are where on Lightroom Classic CC, a catalog is your link between your hard drive, where your photos are, and your Lightroom application or your program. So when you create a catalog, that is your one place where all the photos go to be referenced on your hard drive, and that's a whole nother concept to try to understand. And I think people got confused with catalogs and collections. Collections are simply putting the reference of a photo in a group where you can make all the adjustments you want, you can do everything you want, except you don't run the danger of moving that photo on your hard drive or wherever it is. So here's a key thing. If you can only remember one thing here today, remember to always shoot into an album. In other words, select an album that you want to shoot into or create an album. Now, how you create an album is you simply go up to the plus here, and it says create album down here, or create a folder. Now, an album, a difference between an album and a folder is that you can create a folder, and then you can create albums within a folder. So let's say that you had Arches and Canyonlands. I've got my Arches and Canyonlands here, and let's say I went back to Moab and I went out to Arches and Canyonlands 2019. I could put those both in a folder and call it Arches and Canyonlands. Boom, that's it. So it's like a sub-album inside a big album, and that's all it is. So folder, album, folder, collection. It used to be, a whole different naming thing, but Lightroom's changing, and hopefully in the classic version on the desktop they'll change it to albums too, so there's no confusion between the two. So the other thing you have is you can sort these photos by date, by title, and then you can go up or down. This arrow up or down means you can do it ascending or descending, meaning you can A to Z or Z to A. By the photo count, you can sort them by how many photos are in an album. So if I got 100 photos in one album and 90 in another, 100 will be on top, or I can flip that around and make it 90 to 100. You can also sort them by only locally stored down here, like that, and that way you can do that. All of these can do ascending and descending, and you'll see that if I sort by import date in an album, then that'll go, I've got a descending, meaning first to last. Title, I've got it ascending, meaning alpha to zeta, and so forth and so on. So that's basically what that little feature does. And then over here, you've got add photos, and you can add photos to a camera roll. Whoops, excuse me. Fingers got away from me here. You can add photos to a camera roll, or to files on your computer or your device. So if you want to create a file on your device or to your camera roll, which your camera roll is essentially in iPhone or Android, it's on your your native application. Or you can set it to files, and then you can choose a file where you want to save it. You can clear the cache. In other words, what's cache? Cache is basically a buildup of information, and it helps the search engine find things. And so if you want to clear that cache, if things start to slow down, they get a little sluggish, you can clear the cache. But I must say, be careful, because what will happen is you'll lose some of the ability to find things in the search engine. It does clear up the memory a little bit, but I kind of don't use this one. And then Slideshow, this is a good one, because you can take and go through an album and create a slideshow, and once you do, it'll just play right through. So you can go through and play the slideshow. That was me a long time ago. I don't know how that got in there, but anyway, I shouldn't have shown you that because I don't look like that anymore. Oh well, time moves on. Okay, so I have to admit I was a handsome devil though. Now, let's take a shot. Okay, let's go to Tour Shots 2, and if I check that, I'm in Tour Shots 2 now. So now if I go and shoot a photograph, then I can actually, that photograph will be in Tour Shots 2. So we've talked about how that all works, but that's the important thing, is shoot in an album. If you don't shoot it in an album, then that photograph won't sync with your other devices. So we have many albums here, and these all mirror the albums or collections on my Lightroom Classic CC desktop. So let's really get into the editing part of it here. I'm going to go to Tour Shots 2. I'm going to take an unedited photo, if I can find one here. Let's try this one. So there's no editing done to this. It's kind of a gloomy looking photograph. It's gray. You'll notice when I click on the photograph, I have some new options. Up here in the top, I can do a lot of things with this photo. I can move it to someplace. I can move it to another album. I can add it to another album. I can remove it from an album. I can delete it. I can show or hide the information. I can show or hide the histogram, and I'll show you how to use the histogram here in a second. I can copy the settings, and this one's really cool because let's say I've done some edits, and I've got 3 photos of the same subject, and I've made all these edits. Well, instead of going and making the edits over and over and over again, I can copy those settings that I just did a great job with on one photo, and then I can go to another photo, and I go up to these 3 little dots, and I can go paste settings. And those settings will be pasted right to the photo that I have nothing done to it. Out of that also, I can create, let's say I really have a preset that I like. It may have sharpening in it. It may have some tone corrections that I use over and over and over again. I can create a preset just like you can in Lightroom CC or Lightroom Classic for the desktop. Then if I want to have an album cover photograph, and I got a really nice photograph and I want that to be the feature photo in my album, then I can go ahead and create that as my album cover. Kind of cool, a lot of fun. Then up here, this little thing is the share button. And much like on photos on the Apple computer or other photo apps, you can share it to all the different places you can think of, and it asks you what size you want to share. So for this, I'm not going to actually share this one. It's just going to pick up what size it is, and then it brings up all the things you can share it to. And believe me, there's quite a few. You can also send it to your computer through AirDrop. You can save the image to your computer. You can save it wherever you are. You can copy it, save it to Dropbox, save to files, and print it. And then if you click more, you can save it to the other cameras in your phone, and also you can assign it to a contact. So let's say you take a picture of a friend. You've got that friend's information in your address book. You can actually assign that picture to that actual information you've got on that individual. All right, so that's up at the top. Down at the bottom here we have, or excuse me, one more thing at the top. We have Edit, which is the mode we're in right now. And you can see down here along the bottom, we've got all these different features to edit. You can also rate and review. And if you want a speed review, you can basically just go in here like this and give it 4 stars. I wouldn't give that more than a half a star. You can pick, I give it 2 stars, okay? Then you can pick it or reject it or just flag, no flag. I'm going to say 2 stars, no flag, and then, okay, we're good there. I'm going to go back to 1 star. And the other thing is you can do activity. And if you have a shared album with somebody, let's say that you have a friend and you want to share an album with it and it shares over the cloud, you can put in what activity you're actually doing, and that's kind of fun. You can put in keywords and they will sync with Lightroom CC. So then you can go down here and add keywords, whatever you want. Frankly, I don't really keyword that much because of the search engine is so powerful that I generally don't use keywords. And then here's all the information. It was shot with the APC front camera on July 25th, and it was 1/900th of a second at f2.4 ISO 16. All the information. It's a DNG, meaning it's a raw file. I've given it 1 star. There's no caption, and it was copyright by me. So that's what the info thing does up there. Okay. So let's go back in here and take this photograph, and I'm not going to say this is a great photograph. The weather was terrible. You'll see the moon is up here and this thing, but for the sake of argument, we're going to go ahead and edit. Now, as I mentioned, you've got all these editing tools down here. The first one I always go to, and this is what I do in Lightroom Classic or Lightroom CC. The first one I always go to is to go to Auto, because that uses artificial intelligence, this Sensei that Adobe calls it, and it will do the tone mapping for you. So I hit Auto, and believe me, it works pretty good. So if I go into Light right here, you'll see that it's already done some things for me. Now, all this is familiar because if you use Lightroom, these are all the same things you have in Lightroom. They're no different. And it's really nice because they built these in to look exactly like what goes on in Lightroom CC for the desktop and Lightroom CC. You can also access the tone curves. So if I wanted to bring up the shadows a little bit here and bring down the highlights a little bit here, I can get the classic S curve. I can do it in the reds. I can bring up the reds a little bit, of course. Whoa, that goes a little too far. Drop the greens. I'm going to just leave that alone. I might bring this up a little bit, bring a little bit more of the bridge out. You can go ahead and dull it up. You can bring it up. You can do a lot of different things here. So, having done that, you've got the tone curves, and then you've got the regular tone curve for the whole image. Very, very similar, exactly the same as you have on the Lightroom for desktop and Lightroom CC. I'm going to just go up here and increase the contrast a little bit. And it lags just a tiny bit, you can see that. But here's what we had before, and here's what we have after. I'm not saying this is a great edit. I'm just trying to show you, for the sake of argument, what we've got. So, color. Color, you can change the temperature. You can warm it up. It was pretty gray day, but let's warm it up a little bit. You can change the tint, of course, like you can in Lightroom. The vibrance. Remember, vibrance increases color, but it doesn't oversaturate the whole image. This is great for skin tones. Vibrance will not change skin tones. It will only change the color of anything else other than a skin tone. Saturation increases everything. Saturation is global. It takes the whole photograph and it just increases all the colors, whereas vibrance is a little more subtle. And then if you go into the color up here, you can change, as I said, the white balance and the tint and the vibrance, but you can also go ahead and let's give the bridge a little bit more of a red look, okay? So now we're in hue, and if I double tap that, it takes it back to 0, okay? So if I want to go saturation, I can go like this. That gives me a little bit more. You can see the bridge is a little more red. And if I want to make it a little more luminance here, I can pop the luminance up. So now here's where we started, and here's where we are now. Very powerful. Now this little thing is a target adjustment tool, and that's really cool. I can drag this up or down if I want to go, let's say, to saturation. All I have to do is put my finger on the bridge, and I can bring it up, make it even more red than it is, or more orange than it is. I can go to luminance and drag my finger up here and bring out the luminance. Now what that is doing is it's actually putting a lot of noise into it. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring that back a little bit. Okay. So again, here's before. Sorry, let me get that off of there. Turn that off. Turn that off. Here's the before, and here's the after. So let's go back in here for a minute, and let's go to the blues. And let's bring the blues, let's bring the saturation. Oops, give me target adjustment here. Let me make the skies a little more blue. Actually, it's going to make it more green. I'm going to go over here to my blue. Saturation, yeah, bring that down. Bring it up like that and give the sky a little bit more blue. Now remember, this was taken at night, so I got a disclaimer here that there is some noise. The iPhone camera, you can't help but get noise out of this thing. So there's the before and there's the after. Okay, not a great edit, but I'm just showing you the features for right now. I spend a lot more time if I was with a really great photo. So, okay, I'm done with that. Now I can go down here to, we did light, and I showed you how all that works, the whites and the blacks. The profiles. These are the profiles that just came in from Lightroom Classic. You have color, monochrome, landscape, portrait, and I'm going to go to Adobe Vivid. That gives it a little bit more color, a little bit more richer tones in the colors. Adobe Standard's a little flatter. Portrait softens things up a little bit, and landscape is similar to Vivid, but not quite as overpowering. Okay. Then you see a little check mark down here. I go up and I click that check mark. That's going to say, I want to commit to this. I want to commit to this profile. Now here's the before, and here's the after. Okay. So then the crop, pretty straightforward. The crop tool is pretty straightforward. It works just like the crop tool on the in Lightroom, and you can also go to different aspect ratios. Let's say you want to put it up on Instagram, so you'll get a square, and then you can move it around and decide which is the best square. You can do it for 5x4, 11x8.5, a whole bunch of different things to crop your image. You can lock the crop, or you can unlock these custom ones and go to custom, and let's see how that unlocks down here. So you unlock it, then you can just crop it any way you want to with any dimensions. Straighten tool works just like it does in Lightroom. If you drag it across, it straightens. You can rotate left, right, and you can flip the image around. Now, why would you want to flip the image around? Because in portraits, when you look at somebody and you see your own picture, you look at somebody, you're looking at them without a reflection. When you see yourself in the mirror and then you see your own photograph, you think, well, I look different. That's not a great photograph of me. If you flip it around, that's what you look like in a mirror, and you like your own photographs a lot better. Just a thought. So I've already said okay. If I don't want to do that, I don't have to. So that's the crop feature. Here's the healing brush. You can paint in an area to remove spots, power lines, and other distractions from your photo. So you have the healing brush, and then you have right here, you have the clone stamp tool. You can either select a hard edged brush, a soft edged brush, or no brush at all. So I'm going to select now this is the clone stamp tool. You'll see that you got the same features you have in Lightroom, and you can select how big a brush it is. That's the clone stamp. So that's going to basically take what you've got there and move it around. And now if I want to go to the healing brush, let me just get rid of all this. Let me get rid of those two. Go to the healing brush, get a big soft brush, and then using my finger, I can go and I can take these things out of here. So just paint this out, and it moves it, and I can move these over here and take it away. So if I commit to that, I've taken away, for example, power lines. So that's the whole beauty of the brush, the healing brush, and all the other brushes work the same way. Then we've got the selective edits, and that is the brush, the radial gradient and the linear gradient. So I click X plus sign up here. Let's say I want to do a gradient. I drag the photo. If I want to drag it down like this, this brings a gradient up. It shows me in red any adjustments I make. So now I can go back to light, and I can click that, and I can drop the exposure down. I can increase the contrast, and I'm really going out of control here with this. I can bring up the shadows and drop my blacks down. And then if I commit to that, that's what it's going to look like. I can move this around. I can do it from up top or down at the bottom. If I take the center, I can drag it around just like you can in Lightroom. So I'm not going to do that. I can go up here again. I can select a brush, and I can take a radial gradient. Okay, and that gives me the circle. Now that circle is the same as the circle on the iPhone, and I can do that and reverse it, so everything inside the circle stays the same, and then I can make my adjustments if I want to. Drop the exposure way down like that. I can go back here and reverse that and drop, let's say I want to drop the exposure down here, bring the exposure way up. I mean, I'm exaggerating to show you how these work. I normally wouldn't do it this way. And then if I want to erase something, I can just go ahead and erase the whole thing through there. So that's how that works. I'm not going to commit to that. And then lastly, we have the regular brush. So I can create an area and then do whatever I want. So let's say that I want to just do the bridge here on this section of the bridge. I can brush this in like this. That's going to pick the bridge up, and I'm way over brushing here. But then I can go and I can use any of these tools, and I can blow that way up like that, or I can bring the contrast way up. This comes in handy, and I'll show you another example of how to use this. It's not quite so radical as this. I'm not going to commit to that. So those are the things you have here. Also, you have effects. And I really didn't go into this one yet. I'm sorry. I'm skipping around here. Clarity is just like clarity in Lightroom. It's your mid-tone contrasts. Dehaze. This is great invention, by the way. Great discovery, dehaze. Vignetting. You can bring the vignetting up or down to draw attention to your photograph. And again, like in Lightroom CC, you can vignette the midpoint, the feather, the roundness, and the grain. You can add grain or bring grain out of your photograph. Then you have the detail, sharpening, and of course you can increase the radius, and then you can mask the sharpening like you can in Lightroom Desktop. Then you have the geometry. Now this is guided upright. Let's say that this thing's pretty crooked. All you have to do is draw a line down here. I'm going to turn upright on. guide it upright, I'm going to draw a line here and draw a line here, and that's going to straighten that up if it was crooked. And I don't have an example to show you, but I will. The optics, I can remove chromatic aberration. That's where you get the green and the blue fringing around things, or the magenta fringing, and enable lens correction, which I've already got that as set. The other thing is presets, and you have all these different presets just like you do on our phone. I can change that to sepia tone, black and white sepia, selenium, infrared, all these different presets. And that's the black and white. Then we have creative, desaturated, turquoise, and red. You've got a whole bunch of different stuff here. And these are vignetting presets, for example, heavy vignetting, medium vignetting, and so forth. So, and once you click that checkbox down in the bottom, you've committed to that. That's part of your photograph. So that's where we started, and that's where we are right now. Not a great improvement, but an example of how each one of these tools work. Okay, so now you know how to use the Lightroom camera and how to post-process right on your phone with Lightroom CC Mobile. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, hit the like button, subscribe to videos that I do, and also ring the bell and get notified when I put new videos up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.